So studies about first impressions vary. Some people say that first impressions are formed within the first 30 seconds of you meeting someone or seeing something new. No, wait, it's 3 seconds. No, wait, it's 1/10 of a second. But you know what? The new studies from Princeton claim that first impressions are locked in the blink of an eye. So you know what? People judge each other by the way they look or some superficial qualities. And these initial impressions form a very important role in the way we treat ourselves and the way we treat others. So the question for you is, have you ever made a snap decision, you made up a story in your head, and it wasn't true? So let me tell you what happened. I was watching a television program based on human behavior. And the scene took place in a supermarket. And every single one of the baggers had a disability. Some more severe than others, but even so, every bagger showed up every single day, ready to do a good job, ready to go to work. And one day, this man is standing in line, very impatient, very rude, and he's tapping his foot, and he's looking at his watch, and he's harassing the bagger. And he starts to call him names. And the first was the R word, which isn't even in my vocabulary. And then he called him a dummy. Now, let me just say that this was not staged. This was actual footage that was caught on a hidden camera. Well, all the people in line, the other customers, were outraged. First, because of the harsh words that this really rude customer said, but also about the young man's reaction. So the young bagger turned and said, I can add, I can subtract. I can do numbers forward, I can do them backwards. I can multiply and I can divide, and I never get the wrong answer. Well, all the other customers smiled, and the nasty, rude, impatient guy bolted out of the store as fast as he could. Well, the customers gave this guy high fives and patted him on the back and hugged him. And he said, call me what you want, but I'm not a dummy. So can you imagine how different his life would have been had he not learned how to reject the false perceptions of people that had on him? So today I want to talk about not only initial impressions, but also the potentially damaging effect that negative, incorrect impressions can have on someone's life. Now, we've all heard the phrase, don't judge a book by its cover, right? You've heard that, yes? Yes. Okay, but what happens when that plays out in real life? And what can you do about it? So let me tell you about somebody that I've known for a very long time. It was right before she was going to graduate high school, and this 17-year-old girl was met at the breakfast table with this beautiful white envelope, and it had ribbons and bows and wrapping all over it. And she very excitedly opened this up, but very carefully because she didn't want to ruin the wrapping. And inside it said, congratulations, you've been entered into the Miss Queen's beauty pageant. The note was from her father. And she was shocked because she never thought of herself as particularly beautiful, and she certainly had no intention of doing anything with beauty pageants. And she wondered, how could I have been entered into a beauty pageant without me even knowing about it? And just recently, I have declared that my dream was to go to medical school, which her father said, rolling his eyes. So she always wanted to be this perfect little girl, and so she thought, should I say something? Should I not say something? Should I just go along with the program? And her father sat her down and he said, you need to do this contest and you need to win because all you are is pretty and you'll never amount to anything else. Well, she was devastated to think that she heard this from her own father who thought that she was nothing more than a pretty face. She didn't know what to do. She so wanted to be seen as being smart, even though she was a girl. Well, she toyed back and forth and she said, I just want to be perfect and I don't want to disappoint my parents, but I just can't do this beauty pageant thing. So she decided, even though it was out of character for her, to withdraw from the contest. And she did. And she actually felt a little good about this little rebellious act. Well, her father, undeterred. He entered her in another contest and another contest. And as fast as he entered her was as fast as she unenrolled herself. So she started to think about this, that there were some things going on, these misperceptions about her. And it wasn't just from her father, and it wasn't just about how she looked. It was also about the way she carried herself. People kept thinking that she was confident, and she was anything but that. Inside, she was confused and she doubted everything that she did. And she desperately wanted to be seen as being intelligent, even though it wasn't cool at the time. Well, she also wanted to be seen as somebody that did really hard work, and we'd be known for that. Yet in high school, all of her teachers just naturally assumed that she could breeze her way through every single exam. Little did they know how diligent and even obsessive she was about taking notes and studying. She deserved every one of those A's because nobody ever knew how hard she worked. This pattern kept following her through life, and everybody thought as if everything came easy to her. And sometimes these misperceptions were so strong that they lasted for years. And well after she left high school, her classmates remembered her as a cheerleader because she was cool and popular. She didn't even make the squad. But because they looked at her as being somebody that was cool and popular, they filled in the blanks that were missing and etched them into their memories incorrectly. And no matter what she thought about herself, everybody made up stories about her. And they remembered them for better or worse. But this is just natural. We do this all the time without even thinking about it. How many times have you, if you looked at somebody and you just assumed something? It happens. We try not to hurt anybody, but sometimes we do. So back to our story where our 17-year-old is now a 27-year-old who has her first job in sales with a roofing company. The president of the company said, "You're going to be the face of the company. Just show up, climb up the ladder in a skirt, and smile. And as long as you don't speak when your male expert is doing his presentation, you're going to be wildly successful." Years later, when she started her own company, she started to go to a mastermind group, and part of this group was being paired up with a coach. Well, when it was her turn to be buddied up with a coach, the leader of the mastermind group passed her by. She assumed she didn't need any extra help. I mean, after all, maybe it was what she was wearing or what she looked like or the way she carried herself. But this time she protested, and then she was offered private coaching for a very high fee, which the leader of the group assumed that she could actually afford. So what do people see when they look at you? Do they kind of make up stories? Do you seem like you're misunderstood because of the way you walk or talk or act or speak? Prejudgments happen every single day, multiple times a day. And why? It's based on something that we make up in our minds and we try to believe this. So, if you're pretty, does it mean that your intelligence is automatically discounted? And if you're good at sports, does that mean that everything else goes by the wayside? And if you're overweight, does it mean that you're lazy? And if you're skinny, does it automatically mean that you have an eating disorder? And if you look just a little different, does it mean that you're weird? We tend to put people into different categories without much thought about it. We automatically, unconsciously put people into a bucket and we cast them outside the lines because of the things that we remembered or we inherited or we heard. So what about this young girl? She was told that she could do everything just by her looks, but she also learned some very, very important messages and lessons. First, she learned that she had to create some positive affirmations for herself. Because remember, she was told that she couldn't be anything and would never be anything. So when she became a business trainer, after she completed her training, if nobody offered any kind of feedback, she would say, "Did I do okay? Was I enough? How could I improve it? What could I do better next time?" She also had very high expectations of herself, which she really projected onto other people. Because if she could deal at this level, why couldn't they? You know that saying, if I can do it, why can't you? The problem was, she was inefficient in doing what she wanted to do, and she was trying to make herself feel better. Remember the confusion that she had and the doubt inside. When she got married and she had children, she desperately tried not to pass those negative messages on to her children, and in fact, she encouraged them to be whomever and whatever they wanted to be. Now, ironically, this woman and her very close friend are eerily alike. They have the same adult personalities, the same sarcasm, they're even the same size, and the only way you can really tell them apart is by the color of their hair. They grew up the same way, their upbringings were the same, they're in the same business, and they have this joke that goes on that says they're identical twins from different mothers, even though they met well into adulthood. But there's one real big difference here. Her friend's father was the polar opposite of hers. Her friend's father was her biggest source of encouragement. He told her she could be anything she wanted to be, and he pushed her towards whatever she chose. He was an entrepreneur, and she knew that she would be successful because he told her she could do that as well. He never told her that she couldn't excel in sports because she was a girl, and he never told her what sport that she should be participating in. And she knew that that's where her success was going to be because of her father. And he knew that she was going to be a success because he recognized her intelligence, her stick-to-it personality, and the fact that she tried new things. He never told her that she was only pretty. So these two women who have identical looks on the outside had these two tapes playing in their heads totally differently throughout their entire life. The first woman had to rewind the tape, take away the negative messages, and replace them with positive affirmations. She would constantly ask people to tell her that she was doing well, because remember what her father told her: you'll never amount to anything else. So what if she believed those naysayers? Can we actually get rid of, can we outgrow, can we think about other ways of taking away some of the prejudice that are placed upon us? Well, some of us can, and some of us have little success doing it. Fortunately, that young bagger, he could. And eventually this young woman did as well. So there's a story that's going around on the internet right now, on social media, and I don't know where the original story came from, but thank you to whoever put it out there. And it goes something like this. This 24-year-old boy is on a train, and he's looking out the window, and he's going, "Dad, Dad, look at the trees, they're going behind us." The dad smiled. And this young couple is sitting there, and they're looking at this 24-year-old boy acting like a little child, and they look at him with pity. And then the boy goes, "Dad, Dad, look at the clouds, they're going with us." Well, this young couple couldn't stand it any longer, and they had to say something. So they said to the dad, "Why can't you take your son to a good doctor?" And the dad smiled and he said, "I did, and we're just coming back from the hospital. You see, my son was born blind, and he just got his eyes today." So just for a moment, I want you to imagine this. Is it possible that when you came in here today, you looked around at the other attendees and you created some stories about them? Is it possible that some of the initial impressions that you had about some of the attendees also went across to some of the speakers? Maybe you even judged me. And just for a moment, I want you to think about the fact that maybe some or all of those initial impressions were incorrect. Because in reality, your new strategic partner, your new best friend, the love of your life may be in front of you or behind you or next to you or somewhere in this room. And I challenge you to go back and revisit those first impressions before the event is over. And before you judge anyone, I want you to think about this. Judging is almost always negative. What happens when you think about it in the positive? And are you judging someone looking at the lens from your own issues? And do you remember what it felt like when you were wrongfully judged? So every single day, I go and I compliment somebody that I don't know. And whether it's what they're wearing or what they look like or why I'm attracted to them. And sometimes people smile and say thank you, and sometimes they're like a look of shock, and sometimes they say absolutely nothing. And I know that many people don't get complimented on a regular basis. And so maybe my words would bring them some joy for that moment. So I'm out to breakfast one morning, and there were two older women sitting at a table. And one just had this really sour face. She wasn't smiling, she wasn't talking, she just looked really unhappy. And her friend was trying to engage her in conversation and wasn't doing a really good job. So I said to my friend that I was with, I said, "The woman that's not smiling is beautiful, and I'm gonna tell her." And I did. And she looked at me with a sparkle in her eyes, and she put her hand on mine, and she said, "Thank you, you made my day." So who do you think felt better then? What happens when I decided not to judge her about looking unhappy or not smiling? While it's easy to say, don't prejudge people, it's hard to do because we do it unconsciously and in a split second. And we should do better about not making assumptions about people and prematurely casting them outside the lines. And if you find that you're doing it, go back and revisit and start looking at these people in a different way. Because the truth of who they are might just surprise you. Oh, and by the way, the young girl who was introduced to beauty pageants by her dad, she went on to get 2 degrees. She built a huge business, a successful business in sales. She has 3 successful businesses that she launched. At the age of 55, she decided to jump outside the lines of her comfort zone and go into the crazy world of sales consulting, leaving a cushy, secure job. She's written 3 books about how men and women work together, and her 4th book on leadership is coming out shortly. And she commands big dollars to share her expertise worldwide. That woman is me.